So tell us, how did this all get started?
Well, Dad and I were in the livestock business together and had been for 20-some years. And I was kind of getting tired of chasing sheep and cows and water. And he suggested maybe we look at the Montrose equipment store down there that was up for sale. And so we did. And I think the owner's name was Dan Linton. And we did buy the property.
What were you selling at the time?
We acquired all the franchises, and they were all farm machinery franchises initially. And I started trying to sell machinery, learned a lot. And we had about 9 employees total back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I was trying to do everything. I was selling, I was pulling weeds, I was painting fence, I was doing what little advertising we could afford to do. So it was kind of a one-man show, and I thought I was doing great, but we really weren't making any money back then. But I was enjoying it. It was a lot of fun.
You know, I remember when I was young, you guys had a radio tower right in front of the building. And what was that used for?
Well, we had 6 international pickups along with the other machinery. I think we had Ford, Alice Chalmer, and tractors. We had New Holland haying equipment, Brilliant roller packers. So we were working all the way, you know, the North Fork country, clear down into Norwood and that area, Delta, Olathe, and the ranchers and farmers would put up hay and corn and so forth. And our 6 pickups had kind of a 2-way radio in them. And the tower was about 200 feet high, and we could actually reach clear in the nucleus and talk to somebody back then. So these guys would go out into the field. Sometimes it was midnight when the farmers decided to put the hay up. They wanted a little dew on there because it would keep better. And so maybe at 1 o'clock, all these guys were on call back in the harvest. And they would get in a pickup, and they knew they had all the tools and all the parts they needed. They'd go out there and get the rancher and farmer running again. And it was labor intensive. We had a big service area. There was Albert Aldazoro was a farmer. He bought the first New Holland stack wagon that was sold in this area. And I had to go to Salt Lake, and Mom drove us out there, and then she kind of tailgated us, but you rode in the cab with me. That stack wagon had a top speed of 35 miles an hour.
Wow.
And it was a little enclosed cab, and you'd sit in there with me, and when you get tired, I'd stop and you'd go take a nap in Mom's car, and I'd keep trucking. I don't remember how long it took us, but it was a long ride.
I'm guessing it didn't have air conditioning either.
No, yeah.
Well, also, it was, the cab sat out over the wagon.
About 10
in
feet.
front of the wagon. So every single bump down I-70 was just like a gooseneck, just going up and down.
Yeah, you'd go over the bump, and then a minute later, the wheels would hit the bump, you know. Yeah, it was fun.
So how did we get started in business?
We had a Ranchite line. Ranchite is still around, I believe. I think there's one in Grand Junction. But Ranchite is a line of farm machinery. It's all the nuts and bolts, plowshares, blades for the mower, and we had the front of our building was like going to Walmart. We had all this stuff laid out. People would come in and get their sack full of plow shears or whatever they needed, and so that was kind of fun, you know.
What year did you guys acquire the Coleman Camper franchise, and what lines were you selling for the campers?
Yeah, you know, we were selling whatever we could to pay some bills, and we took on a Still line of chainsaws, and a lot of logging going on around Paonia and all over, and that turned out to be a big business. In addition to the chainsaws, we took on the Coleman Camper and the canoe, and that was fun. That was educational, and we sold a lot of campers. You know, the pop-up campers.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually pull them behind a Subaru. They were lightweight, you know.
Do you remember what those cost back then, brand new?
Oh, maybe $1,800, $2,200 for the top of the line. You know, they'd sleep, I think, 6 people. They'd
Yeah.
fold out, you know.
So what year did Subaru come to you and ask you to become a dealer?
Well, it was 1974, and I don't remember if it was June or July, but there was a salesman that showed up and wanted to speak to the owner, and I was out pulling weeds and stuff, and he said, "How would you like to sell a Subaru?" And I said, "Well, I don't even know what that is." I really thought it might be another chainsaw line or something.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I was
'Cause you had-
more in tune with machinery than I was automobiles.
You
back
had Still at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said, no, he said, "Come out here and look at this little car." So went out, it was a little Subaru coupe, and he gave me the walk around and took me for a ride, kind of scared me half to death. We were going out towards Minoka at about 80 miles an hour. He said, "Watch this." And he cranked the steering wheel and did a complete U-turn in the middle of the road, and got back, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And he said, "Well, you know, these things get 40 miles to the gallon." And that particular two-door model was around $1,900.
Wow.
But it was stick shift, no air conditioning, came in 4 colors total, 1 interior color, and I was like, you know, I think we could sell some of these. And actually, they had front wheel drive and all wheel drive. So some of them, then they went to all their vehicles had all wheel drive.
Right.
When they first started out, they had a couple like that coupe was front wheel drive.
Did they have all wheel or was it 4-wheel?
Well, actually, it was 4-wheel.
4-wheel.
Yeah.
Where you pulled the lever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he told me that at the time that it might be 6 months to a year before we get our cars. But we signed up in '74. And as it turned out, I found out later that Bird on Broadway got the first franchise in Colorado. And he was about a month and a half ahead of me. So he signed up Bird, came over here, and you know, I was the second one that got the franchise. And it was pretty interesting because by the time we got the cars, they were a year old. They were brand new with new MSOs, but they were a year old.
So it was 1975, but the cars were 1974.
Yeah, and we sold year-old cars for about 6 or 7 months. And, you know, people that we sold them to, they were new cars. You know, they didn't care. And the banker gave me a little problem with that because he said, "Well, I told you I'd do new car floor plan." I said, "These are new cars." So anyway, he got over that, and we went forward. He ended up being pretty happy. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
So I don't remember if it was you or Gene Bowen that told that story, but I recall a story about, you know, during the gas crisis in the later 70s, like you would have 4 or 5 transports of brand new Subarus showing up on the lot, and every car was pre-sold. I mean, they didn't show up to be put on the lot; they were already sold.
Yeah, it was. It kind of worked out really well. You know, gasoline got so high, the price of gasoline was high, and then shortly after that, interest rates kind of took a real spike in the '80s sometime. So here we were with a car that would get you 40 plus miles to the gallon, and at about half the price of anything else you could buy in town. You know, they're a great car. You know, we're lucky we got them.
And Subaru wasn't the only one driving around signing up dealers at that time.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think it was 2 months or a month and a half after I signed up with Subaru, this guy showed up on the doorstep and wanted to know if I'd be interested in selling Toyotas. And I knew what a Toyota was when I said I'd buy, hook up with Subaru. I really didn't know what that was. And I said, well, yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. And they said they were kind of getting ready to go, and they said the only thing is you can't have another import under the same roof. And I said, well, that's kind of a problem because I just signed up with Subaru about a month ago. And he said, well, you've got a decision to make. And I said, well, you know what, I'm just going to stay with the Subaru. And, I wouldn't mind having the Toyota line, but quite honestly, at least in Colorado, we've done real well with the Subaru. A great car.
So, what year did you come into the business?
I started part-time in 1978. I've always loved office work, and so that's where I gravitated to. And but I also answered the phones, and it was a mouthful. Good morning, this is Montrose Equipment Subaru. So anyway, I really, once you kids were in school full time, then I started spending a little more time down here.
Tell us about our computer system back in the early days.
Oh, that's good. Oh, yeah. Well,
Number 2 lead pencil, probably.
Number 2 lead pencil and lots of ledgers. And our spreadsheets really were spreadsheets all over the place. You had to have a sturdy eraser, but it was a great way to learn the bookkeeping system here. Probably in the late 80s or maybe right around the early 90s. Oh my, I was so nervous when we got that first computer. It was a big thing. But I was afraid to have anybody else touch it because I was afraid they'd screw it up, they'd break it. And heavens, now everybody carries their own computers in their backpacks.
Tell us about our relationship with the Hartman family.
That's an interesting story. The Hartmans had that franchise for almost 100 years, starting with my grandfather Hartman and their grandfather Hartman, Sid Hartman. And, they got a little bit landlocked and their business was trying to grow, and they just ran out of room on Main Street. So I think Cookie and Tommy Hartman approached me and wondered if I would like the franchise. And I was really taken back by that, and it worked out pretty well. So we ended up buying all their parts. We bought, all the vehicles and stuff they had. We hired, half a dozen employees from Hartman's. That was one of the requirements under the purchase, that we keep their good guys on. So we did that, and it worked out well. And, they had, it was Dodge, Chrysler, Plymouth, and I think that was it back then. But that really worked out well because we had the space for it here and the shop and everything. So I was proud to be selling the Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth line back then. And, it was nice of them to do that. And I tried to make everybody proud, So Grandma Mabel and Grandpa Sid. Anyway, it worked out for them and it worked out for us.
So, on the showroom from time to time, we have a car on the showroom. We call the car Mabel. Tell us a little bit about Mabel.
Well, I got a call one day from a fella out south of town, and he was restoring old vehicles. And he called me up and he said, I have a car out here you need to come and look at. And I said, well, he said, I've restored it. And I said, what is it? And he said, it's a 1927 Dodge Fast 4, meaning it's 4-cylinder engine, but it did, I don't remember, 4 miles in a minute or something like that. I don't know what the top speed was. So I went out and looked, and he had restored this car, this 27 Dodge 4-door sedan, to original felt seats that they used, the green Dodge color they had, the wooden spoke wheels. The car was just like brand new. And he said, I also have the bill of sale where your granddad, Sid Hartman, sold this car brand new off the showroom floor. And I thought, well, I guess I'm in. So I came back and asked you two boys, I said, you guys want to do this? And they said, sure. So anyway, we got Mabel back under the Chrysler roof and Dodge roof. And, it brings back a lot of old memories. And so we're glad to have her. I think a lot of people really enjoy coming and seeing what the cars used to look like in 27, So yeah, it's fun.
And so, one of the reasons you call her Mabel is because...
Well, because of Grandma Mabel. Sid and Grandma Mabel Hartman were my grandparents from my mother's side. And I just loved Grandma Mabel. And she was deaf later in life, and she taught us all to speak sign language. And she was a worker and big-hearted person, and so anyway, that's why this car's named Mabel.
I remember you telling me a story about her one time where she also worked, I guess, at the movie theater. Is that right?
Yes. She played at the silent movies downtown, the same, what is the name?
Fox Theater.
Fox
Fox Theater. They had a pit down below the screen, and she would be watching. She was deaf, but she knew when to do the dun 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 and that kind of stuff. And she was a great piano player herself. She taught my mom how to play, and I think she and Noreen had a duet one time years ago. And yeah, she was a wonderful person. So.
What year did we expand the building?
Well, I think it was 2000, and we were just out of room. We had more than 9 employees by that time. And I think Chrysler also wanted to see this kind of facade look that was like the McDonald's arch thing. And so they kind of was requiring that, And I think it worked out really well. We obviously had the space, and I'm proud of the building, the way it's turned out. And so...
Yeah, it was interesting to me that the original Montrose equipment building was set as far back on the property that it was, because that did allow you to expand forward. And I think a lot of the businesses that were, established in the 50s and 60s on this road were set further back for expansion purposes.
Yeah, it allowed for, it was smart planning, If you put a building in the middle of all this space, I don't think that's good either.
It's hard to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stories from our past that from time to time you'll tell. You want to share one of those with us now?
One story that comes to my mind that wasn't that unusual back in the day, but a lot of people did business with cash only, and I remember several of my friends coming down and buying a vehicle and just paying, they'd have a big brown paper sack full of thousands of dollars. And I had a friend of mine at the time was living in Lake City, Colorado. He's kind of a mountain man type guy. And he came down and he came in and he dropped off this brown paper bag full of money, and he said, I want a four-wheel drive used pickup. And I don't care what color it is. And he said, I'll be back about 5 o'clock. Get it ready for me. And I said, well, how much money do you have in here? And he said, you know, I'm not even sure. I know he'll treat me right. And so he left, and I started counting the money, and it took me quite a while, and I think there was like $4,500 in there. So I sold him an international truck that was a good solid truck, but it was the worst brown looking color I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, well, he said he didn't care what color it was. So he showed up and he said, am I ready to go? And I said, yeah, sign these papers. He walked outside and he says, where's my truck? And I said, it's right over there. And he said, that's my favorite color. So I got lucky on that one.
So back in those days compared to today, the way we do business as far as desking deals, how is it different? What did you do back then that we're not using today?
You know, it wasn't just cash money. We traded for all kinds of stuff. You know, I traded for, I think it was a 270 rifle, deer hunting rifle, and there was a dentist in town that used to, when he was pulling teeth, he melted all the gold in the teeth, and he kept bringing you down these gold nuggets. And it's pretty interesting, you know.
And how about the horse?
Yeah, well, we not only traded for a horse, but then later the guy wanted to come by and trade me about 10 pounds of horse meat. And I said, well, I've never had any. And he said, well, you're going to like it. So anyway, but it was just different back then. It was fun. It was different. You know, Montrose is just a great place to live. We've been really lucky that we're all here. And, but yeah, it's been fun.
It's been a great ride.
Right, yeah.
So after we acquired Jeep, we had to move Subaru into its own facility. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, getting the Jeep franchise, you know, I've been trying to buy the Jeep franchise for years. And because I just thought we needed it to go with what we were trying to do. And we couldn't get it done. And then you know more about the reorganization and the bankruptcy thing. And when Chrysler wasn't alone, I think General Motors and several of them kind of took out bankruptcy, and they reorganized their franchise dealers to different areas and tried to condense things together.
So after the bankruptcy, you know, and acquiring Jeep, Chrysler came to us and said that we couldn't have Subaru in the same facility anymore. So that was about the time, I don't remember what year that was, but we took Subaru and purchased the old Ford building up the street. Is that correct? And,
you know, I think, yeah, and I was very nervous about that. Because we'd sold Subarus from this lot for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think both you and Fletcher kind of steered me on the right idea that we need to separate Subaru out by itself, which Subaru wanted to do anyway. And that was a really good move. Subaru has grown. You sell more Subarus now as a standalone than we did when we mixed it together. It's been a really good move for us.
So in 2016, we had a chance to buy the property adjacent to Subaru. Tell us a little bit about that.
We did. The Subaru had a program. They were growing at such a quick rate nationwide at dealers' service capacities weren't able to handle the influx of the new vehicles that all the new cars were being sold. And so, I mean, there was dealers out there that were putting customers out, 2 to 3 months just for an oil change. And so they came up with a program called the Fox program, and that was to assist dealers in acquiring more property to expand their service facilities, to keep up with the demand of the new vehicle sales. And that's the main reason why we did it, and for future growth.
Great.
It's a great location. It's not that far away from where the Chrysler store is now, and it's really worked out well. And I think you guys are doing a great job at Subaru and down here right now. So I guess hard work and preparation are the definitions of luck. I don't know. Anyway, we've been lucky. Norrie and I feel pretty lucky. It's been a great ride. Both of you boys are just doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate it. We're proud of you. The family tradition. I personally couldn't be happier.
It's just so remarkable that our family has grown and with the community, and we've grown together as a family, and we're really proud of what you guys have done with the small start that Dad and I had 50 years ago. And we just wish you the best of luck for the next 50.
Amen.